There is some magic that comes with player development in the game of baseball. Learn about your team's stars of tomorrow today on the Prospect Wizard podcast. Serving up the magic is the Prospect Wizard himself, Greg Mraz. Welcome to the second episode of the Prospect Wizard podcast. I am the Prospect Wizard, Greg Mraz. If you have not listened to us or watched us yet, well, welcome. This is your first experience. We won't keep you for too long, but we hope that you do enjoy the show. If you want to see our first episode, you can search Prospect Wizard on YouTube. If you just want to listen, not have to look at my ugly mug, well, you can listen on our SoundCloud page by searching Prospect Wizard. Follow us on Twitter at Prospect Wizard. Like us on Facebook, our page, The Prospect Wizard. And if you want to tweet at me at Greg D. Mraz. Or you can also send me an email, prospectwizard@gmail.com. Now, our first episode was on White Sox prospect and the top prospect in all of baseball, Yoan Moncada. Now, I know I still got that stuff behind me. I don't want to make this seem like this is a White Sox-centric podcast. I promise you it's not. But one of the things that the White Sox did this offseason is something we alluded to in the first episode, is they finally got the message that they needed to rebuild. And they needed to trade established big league talent for up-and-coming prospect talent. Now, Moncada was one piece of the puzzle, who they got in exchange for Chris Sale. A couple of other prospects included in that deal, including Michael Kepik. We found out that is how it's pronounced. But the stranger trade, at least on the opponent end, or the bigger steal for the White Sox, came in their dealing of Adam Eaton to the Washington Nationals. And the centerpiece of that trade that they got back is the subject of today's podcast, and that is Lucas Giolito. Lucas Giolito was one of the best arms coming out of high school in the 2012 draft. He was the 18th overall pick by the Nationals. He had Tommy John surgery his senior year of high school, which is probably why he didn't go inside the top 5. 6'6", 257. I mean, think about how a pitcher is built like that. If you're 6'6", and you have that much girth to you, you better believe you got a high 90s fastball, and that's exactly what Giolito has. Not to mention he's got a plus curveball and an improving changeup. He's MLB Pipeline's number 1 pitching prospect, and he's their 3rd overall prospect amongst any players. Like Yoan Moncada, he has also made his Major League debut already. He had 4 starts, 2 relief appearances with the Nationals this past season. Didn't fare too well. 6.75 ERA over 21 and a third innings of work, 12 strikeouts, 11 walks, and an opponent's batting average of .295. But you look at his body of work over the course of his time as a minor leaguer, and it's easy to see why there's such a high buzz about this guy. In Harrisburg this season, Double-A, where he spent the majority of the season, 5-3, 3.17 ERA, and 14 starts over 71 innings of work, 72 strikeouts in 71 innings. Anytime you have got a strikeout rate that is over 1 per inning, you certainly have yourself a guy who is going to put a premium on missing bats, whether that be overpowering with his fastball or using his breaking ball in 0-2 and 1-2 counts. One thing that I've learned that I think is extremely important when you're scouting pitchers, and this comes from 2 years being around scouts and coaches in the minor leagues. It's not necessarily how effective your stuff is, but how you're able to get hitters off balance. And that is a phrase that may be overused at times. But when you get hitters off balance, it's not blowing a fastball by a guy. It's throwing a fastball on a count where you expect a breaking ball. It's using a breaking ball on a first pitch when normally a guy's going to expect a fastball. It's staying consistently fastball if you're able to paint the corners in all 9 sections of the strike zone, because you figure the strike zone, as you've seen a lot of those maps on Fangraphs, they have those hot zones and cold zones and what have you. The biggest thing about Lucas Giolito is he's only 22 years old. That's like Yohan Moncada. He's an extremely young player, and he made his major league debut at a very young age. He had some struggles early in his minor league career, but he has quickly proven that he's going to be a guy to be dependent upon for a long time. He's also had his history of injury troubles. He missed some time this past season. As we said, he had Tommy John surgery coming out of high school. So in his draft year, he only threw 2 innings with the GCL Nationals. Not something that you have to be worried about too much, but when you miss most of your senior year of high school, it can be somewhat of a risk when you draft a guy. Do the White Sox feel like this is somebody they want on their big league roster right away? We've already alluded to the fact that they've traded Chris Sale, so they've got Jose Quintana as one of their main hurlers, and then Carlos Rodon seems to be a decent part of that rotation as well, and the White Sox have other pieces that could be shifting around to make up their 2017 rotation. Like we said in our first episode, and if you haven't seen it, you can go back into our archives. If you're watching this right now, you've probably already seen our first episode, and if you haven't, I encourage you to go back and do so. The White Sox are not a playoff contender for 2017. They've traded away too much of their major league talent. They're more than likely going to be shipping off guys like Todd Frazier in the near future, and position player-wise, they're not as deep as they'd like to be at the major league level, especially at the catcher position. And one of their top prospects, Zach Collins, is nowhere near being ready to be a big league catcher. Bottom line is, the White Sox are not ready to contend for the playoffs. So do you want to have Lucas Giolito be on that big league roster right away? I think this is a guy that if he has a good spring training, absolutely. If not, start him at AAA Charlotte. And if the White Sox somehow end up in contention, bring him up. Have him on an innings limit, but bring him up and see what he can do consistently at the big league level. The Nationals thought that he had the right stuff to warrant a call-up, and clearly he didn't at that point in his career. But what caught so many people by surprise, including Nationals pundits, is why, for an outfielder like Adam Eaton, did the Nationals trade away a guy who could be a centerpiece of their rotation for years and years to come? Now, the Nationals have a great rotation already with guys like Steven Strasburg and Max Scherzer leading the charge, but there's obviously never a shortage of pitching depth across any board. Every organization wants to be deeper pitching-wise, and the White Sox certainly got deeper by picking up Giolito. He's not big league ready in some minds. In other minds, he is. With a plus fastball that's going to get close to 100 miles an hour at times, it's going to clock, sit around 96. This guy has got big league talent already. But who knows if he is ready necessarily for the big league level. I would really like to see Lucas Giolito in a White Sox uniform at some point this season. Whether it's on a consistent basis, I don't know. He's not going to start the season on the big league roster, and I think that is probably for the best. Well, that just about does it for this edition of The Prospect Wizard. We hope that you enjoyed some of the magic that I brought today, and we hope that you continue to follow along as this simul podcast video cast gets posted to the web. Like we said, email us at prospectwizard@gmail.com if you'd like to interact with us, get involved. We certainly hope that you want to be a part of the program. Coming up in our next episode, we're going to talk about a guy that is a top position player talent, and is certainly going to have a lot of work to do in order to get to the big league level. He has not played above low A, but former third overall pick Brendan Rodgers of the Colorado Rockies, subject of our next episode here on the pod, the Prospect Wizard.